passports, and this is actually going to be a function, and this is going to take in passport. We're going to notice I didn't include passport up here. We're going to pass it in from the app.js file. So we want to take that passport object and just say passport.use, and then we want to say inside here new local strategy, and we want to add in some options such as username field. Now you could have username if you want. We're not using a username, so we want to say email is going to be our username. This should actually be a string. Alright, so username field is email, and then after the curly brace here, we're going to put in our arrow function, and this is going to take in three things. It's going to take in email, password, and done. So basically the first thing we need to do is match the user. We want to first check to see if there's an email in the database that whatever they pass in, is there an email with that, or I'm sorry, is there a user with that email? So let's say match user. Alright, so the way that we can do this is by using Mongoose. We'll do find one, just like we did with the validation, and we'll say see if there's an email that matches this email. And then if there is, we're going to get a promise, so we'll do .then, and let's also do .catch. Alright, so for .catch, alright, in the .then, let's see, yeah, inside the .then it's going to give us the user. It's either going to give us the user or it's going to give us null, I believe. So we want to say user, then we'll use an for the user, and then options. So we'll say null. Okay, in a typical web application, the credentials used to authenticate a user will only be each subsequent request will not contain credentials, but rather from the set here. Done error, yeah. And if we want to keep this consistent, we'll do arrow functions here. Oops. All right. So that should work. Now what we need to do is add a couple lines of middleware. If we go back here, we need these two lines right here, passport.initialize and passport.session. So copy that, and we're after the express session .js. We want to put it after the express session middleware. Okay, we'll put it right between that and the flash. We'll say passport middleware. Okay, that's that. Now, passport is not defined. So basically, now this is initializing our local strategy, right? And it's telling us passport is not defined because we actually need to require this file in our app.js, and we need to pass in passport. So let's go up top. And we'll go right up to the top here, and let's say passport config. and then we're going to pass. All right, now, very good, and this file is now being required. All right, now we haven't created our route yet, right? When we submit this login form, when we submit this, it goes to users/login. It makes a post request to that route. So we have to handle that. We have to basically tell that route to use the local strategy. So let's head back over to
for things that we want to modify. The first is going to be, where do we go if there's a success?
To the very bottom here, and let's say and pass this file as well. So, and I can actually I actually did show you in the documentation. And I actually did show you in the documentation. And so basically we have to do this, and it's important to remember to do this at the end. Local, and we're going to pass in some parameters here. I want to do a success redirect. So on success, what do we want to do? We want to get redirect to /dashboard. Failure redirect, we want to go back to the login page, so /users/login, and then I also want to show a flash message, so we'll say failure, and we need to, so we'll save that. Now let's go back to our application and let's try to log in with a. So we'll save that. Next. Okay, and that should implement our strategy. So we'll save that. Now let's go back to our application and let's try to log in with something that's not going to work. So I'll say like tech guy info. Next is not defined. Oh, we have to put next right here. Let's try that again. Okay, so it just reloads the login page, right? Now, in order to show that flash message, what it does is it gives us, I'm actually here, and this is gonna be just for this. So let's reload. Let's see what is registered. Okay, so we have Brad at Gmail is an actual user. So let's do Brad at Gmail, but let's do the wrong password. So let's do route yet, but the login system is working. Dashboard, now we haven't created that route yet, but the login system is working. The registration's working, the login is working. All we have to do now is create the dashboard and the logout. So let's do that. Let's go to our index route and let's see, we'll put a comment here. This is the welcome page. And let's see, we'll copy.
So our success redirect is going to go to our home page, which is just slash up here. And for some reason, if there's a strategy, you see that we're not actually passing authenticate user to our local strategy, we're passing it to passport.use. So let's make sure that we are properly passing authenticate user to our new local strategy and not to the passport.use. Now let's save that. Scroll down, you can see that we have no errors with the application, so we can refresh over here, and our login page is working. Let's try to register with a user. We'll just do w, w@w, and w. And now if we try to log in with a random email and a random password, we click login. Oops, we make sure this is an email. And you'll see that it says no user with that email. Now let's choose the correct email and a wrong password, and we'll get password incorrect. And now finally, if we use the correct email and the correct password, click login. You see that it's loading for a while, and that's probably because we have an error. And we do actually have an error. We're not actually implementing our serialized user or our deserialized user functions yet. So let's do that. Inside of our serialized user, all we need to do is serialize our user, so we can just say user.id. We just want to get the user's ID and save that into our session. And we need to make sure that we pass this to the done function. Null is for our error, and in here, user ID is the actual serialized version of our user. Next, we need to do almost the exact same thing for our deserialized, but instead of here, what we want to do is we actually want to get the user. So what we're going to do is wrap this onto a separate line so it's a bit easier to read for you all. And we want to get our user by ID. So we'll just say get user by ID, and we're going to pass it in the ID right here that we're getting. We want to make sure that we return this. And this get user by ID is something we need to make sure we pass in up here. So let's pass in this get user by ID, go into our server, scroll up to where we define that, just right here. And we're going to define a function which takes an ID, and we're going to get a user by that ID. And it's going to be almost exactly the same as our email function, but instead of comparing emails, we're going to be comparing IDs, just like this. Now we can actually test that. We can go into our email, or our register, make sure we register that user, and we can type in the email correctly and the password, click login, and you'll see it redirects us back to that perfect page for our index of where we want to log in if we have an authenticated user. And the best part about using Passport is that we can get our user really easily. Instead of passing our name, we want to pass our user's name. So we can just say here, our request.user.name. And request.user is just going to be the actual user that we're using. Now if we save this, make sure we go back to our register page, re-register our user, and we want to use that exact email and login. You see it says hi w, which is the name of the user that we specified. And that's the power of using session with Passport, is request.user is always going to be sent to the user that's authenticated for that moment. But there's a big problem with our application. For example, if we were to just save this so that our user no longer exists, we can go to this index page and it gives us an error because we don't have a user, and we can access this information even if we're not logged in. But of course, we don't want to allow non-logged in users to access this information. So let's work on protecting all of our different routes for when we're not logged in. And to do this is actually really simple. Let's just minimize this so it's a little bit out of the way. And we just want to create a new function. This function is going to be check authenticated. And this function is going to take a request, response, and next. This is essentially a middleware function, which is just going to take our request and response and a next variable that we call whenever we're done finishing up our authentication here with check authenticated. And what we want to do is we just want to check if the user is authenticated. So because of Passport, we can call a function on request which is called is authenticated. Authenticated. And this function is just going to return true if there's a user that's authenticated, or false if there is no user. So if it returns true, authenticated, and this function is just going to return true if there's a user that's authenticated, or false if there is no user. So if it returns true, we can just come in here and we just want to return our call to next, essentially saying everything works, just go on to the next. But if it returns false, what we want to do is we want to redirect the user. So we'll say response.redirect. We don't want to redirect them to the login page. So now we can use this check authenticated middleware, go all the way up to here where we have in our app.get, and whatever response.redirect, we don't want to redirect them to the login page. So now we can use this check authenticated middleware, go all the way up to here where we have in our app.get, and whatever we want to authenticate, we just put in this check authenticated before our actual function, and this will get called first. And if for some reason there's a problem, to here where we have in our the user to our login, that, and whatever authentication here would check authenticated. Whoops, our call to the login page where we have in our. So now we can use this check authenticated middleware, go all the way up to here where we have in our app.get, and whatever we want to authenticate, we just put in this check authenticated before our actual function, and this will get called first. And if for some reason there's a problem, it'll actually redirect the user to that home page or the login page. So now let's save that, and if we just try to go to this page, you'll see immediately we get redirected to login. And again, if we try to go back to that, it's going to redirect us to our login page because we're not logged in yet. We want to do the same thing for when we are logged in. So if we log in with a user, we're just going to register our same W user, and we're going to log them in. We don't want to allow them to go back to login. For example, if I type in login, I can go back to the login page even though I'm already logged in. So we want to use another check. This one's going to be almost exactly the same. So we can come down here, function. This is going to be called check not authenticated. It's going to take in a request, a response, and a next. And inside of here, we want to do that same check to see if our user is authenticated. But if they are authenticated, we want to redirect them. So we're going to say res.redirect. Res.redirect, and we want to redirect them to the home page, just like this. It's going to redirect them back to that dashboard. Same check to see if our user request, a response, another check. This one's
секунды показалась звезда, мы молчим, но мы
I can go back to the login page even though I'm already logged in. So we want to use another check. This one's going to be almost exactly the same. So we can come down here, function. This is going to be called check not authenticated. It's going to take in a request, a response, and a next. And inside of here, we want to do that same check to see if our user is authenticated. But if they are authenticated, we want to redirect them. So we're going to say res.redirect, res.redirect, and we want to redirect them to the home page, just like this. It's going to redirect them back to that dashboard. And if for some reason they're not authenticated, we just want to continue on with the call. So now we can put this check authenticated in all of the places we want to check to see if a user is not authenticated. For example, we don't want to allow users to go to the login page if they're already authenticated. Users not authenticated. For example, we can put this check authenticated in all of the places we want to check to see, just like this. It's going to redirect them back to that dashboard. And if for some reason they're not authenticated, we just want to continue on with the call. So now we can put this check authenticated in all of the places we want to check to see if a user is not authenticated. For example, we don't want to allow users to go to the login page if they're already authenticated. We don't want to allow them to log in if they're already authenticated. All of the places, homepage, just like this, it's going to redirect them back to that dashboard. And if for some reason they're not authenticated, we just want to continue on with the call. So now we can put this check authenticated in all of the places we want to check to see if a user is not authenticated. For example, we don't want to allow users to go to the login page if they're already authenticated. We don't want to allow them to log in if they're already authenticated. Same with register. And lastly, again, with register down here. All of these we want to make sure that no users logged in if they want to access these different routes. So now if we register a user using the register, make sure we log in, and we try to go to that login page. So let's type in /login in the URL, hit enter, and you see that we get an error. So let's check out that function we just wrote. And it looks like down here, we forgot to put in our return for when we're redirecting the user. Now let's save that. Make sure we go back all the way to our register page. Make sure the name is same user we've been using this whole time, and we log in. And now if we try to go to that login page, login, hit enter, you see it redirects us back to this dashboard page because we're already authenticated. We can do the same thing by trying to go to our register page. And again, it's going to redirect us back here to our dashboard. Now the very last thing that we have to set up is our final route, which is going to be for logging our user out, because right now we have no way to log out, we're just stuck on this page. So we need to create a delete request. And this delete request, we're just going to call logout, and it's going to take our typical request and response variables, just like this. And inside of here, all we need to do is just call request.logout, logout, just like that. And then we can just redirect the user. So we can just say request.redirect, and we just want to redirect back to the login page. This logout function is again something that Passport sets up for us automatically. It'll clear our session and log our user out. And in order to call this delete function, we can't actually do that directly from HTML. What we need to use is we need to use a form and we need to post. But since delete is not actually supported by forms, we can only use post. We need to use another final library. So let's go over and install this library, npm I, and this is called method override. And essentially what this will allow us to do is actually override our method that we're using. And so instead of using post, we can actually call this delete method here. So now let's scroll all the way up to the top, make sure we include this library. So we can say const method override is going to be equal to require of method override, and we want to make sure we use that. So we'll say app.use method override, and inside of here we actually pass what we want our method override to be. In our case, we're just going to use underscore method. This is what we're going to pass for our method. So in order to see that in an example, let's go into our index here and create a form. This is going to be our logout form. So the action is just going to be /logout, and we want to make sure in here that we put question mark and then underscore method, and that's going to be equal to delete. So this underscore method is what we're using to override our method, which we set here, which is going to be post. So we're going to override that with delete, so that inside of our server here, we can call this app.delete that we have here instead of app.post for logout. This is just safer because you should always use delete when you're deleting things. So now come down here inside of our form. All we need to do is put a single button, which is going to be our submit button. So we can put the type of submit, and instead of here, we can just put text of logout. Now if we save that, make sure that we re-register our user. So we can put our name, all the same stuff that we've been doing this whole time. You now see we have a logout button, and when we click that, of course we're going to get an error, and it's because, as I can see, we put request.redirect, and this should be response.redirect. So now let's try that again. Let's make sure we go back to our page, register our user, log in, everything's looking good, and when we click log out, you see it brings us back to the login because our user's logged out, and we no longer can go and access our homepage. And finally, we have an entirely working login application which you can plug into your project you're working on. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to check out my other videos linked over here, and also subscribe to the channel for more videos of me simplifying the web. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.